story. Can you guys hear me? Sorry. I'm going to tell you a story about how I met my dead ex-husband. And it's my history. He's now passed on, but we had some good times. So let's rewind the clocks a bit to the 90s. I'm a Gen Xer. Does anyone here know what a zine is? Raise your hand if you didn't. Okay, cool. So when I was in high school, I'm gonna lower this a little bit. When I was in high school, is that better? My sister was a graphic designer. Thank you. That's a little bit more comfortable. My sister was a graphic designer, and I was bored, and I was learning these programs, and I decided I'm gonna make a zine. And it was called Transcendence. And it was very silly. It was just kind of a fun way of sharing poetry and drawings and things like that. And so there was this underground kind of scene where you would trade with other zines, and this is when postage was really cheap, like 29 cents. And my parents had a copy machine, so it was very low budget and a lot of fun. And it was a good way to meet people, and so I ended up getting a lot of pen friends this way. After high school, I kind of kept the zine going a little bit, but I was in college and I didn't have that much time. So I sent a few of the issues to this big magazine in San Francisco called Fact Sheet 5. And it was like a phone book of different zines, right? So there was a little tiny blurb in there about Transcendence, write to Susie Stack on 3424 Shady Lane, Glenwood, Maryland, my parents' address. And so I got a few people were asking for, send $1 in the mail, right, in a little envelope, or send me a couple stamps and I'll send you the zine. And I got this one, I guess it was a postcard actually, from a person named Joe Voodoo Trademark out of Culver City, California. And he's like, oh, I'd love to get your zines and whatever. And so we started, I gave him my zine. I said, well, I only do trades at this point. So he ended up actually making a zine called Secrets. And we were trading zines at this point. We were actually sending letters, and it got to the point where we were sending mixtapes, and it was, at one point I sent him my hair, and he sent me a videotape of roller coasters. This is back in the 90s, right? So he strapped like this video camera on his chest, going up and down. Anyway, it was pretty wild back then. So my senior year of college, I went to Towson University. I'm a Baltimore girl. I ended up studying at the Glasgow School of Art. So I knew from writing to him, I got the gist that he was Scottish. I knew he was from Edinburgh. And so that was sort of the back of my mind, but I hadn't really been in touch with him and, whatever. So I ended up going to Scotland, and I found my address, and I sent a postcard to his P.O. box, Joe Voodoo Trademark. And he said, well, I guess I should come clean with you and tell you my real name. It's like, oh yeah, it wasn't Joe Voodoo Trademark? He said, oh, I wanted it to be Voodoo Industries, but it was cheaper to be a person, so to open up a P.O. box. So anyway, so I told him, actually, I'm gonna be in Scotland. He's like, oh, that's great, you should go visit my parents, da-da-da-da-da. And I sent a postcard to his P.O. box, but I messed up the numbers on the P.O. box, so it took a delay. It was probably a couple weeks late getting to him. So by this time I was already in Scotland, and it was October, and I just had my 21st birthday in the UK, and nobody carded me. So I was feeling quite, what's that word? Lugubrious? I was feeling very lugubrious. And then I get this letter from him, and he says, would you like to go to the opera? He had an opera ticket stub for Rigoletto, and he wrote, fancy it, with a post-it note on there. I was like, well, fancy it, yes. So it was kind of cool because my study abroad program actually sponsored me to go down to London because I was in Glasgow. So if he turned out to be a real creep, I could already had somewhere to stay, and it was like, okay, I can figure this out. So I took this overnight train, which was my first mistake because it was one of those stop every 45 minutes and wake you up. So I did not sleep the entire overnight thing. And I arrived in London very weary before the hotel would even let me go in to get checked in. And I realized, well, I'd already made plans with him. We talked on the phone and said, okay, I'm gonna meet him in Jared's Cross, which is the western part of London, and he worked in Pinewood Studios, so he was a visual effects dude. And he was working on this movie called Event Horizon, which is like a horror movie in space. It had Lawrence Fishburne in it, and anyway, all right, we're getting there. So I'm 21 at the time. This is before cell phones. I'm pretty good at map reading, but I had to get to the train station to meet him in Jared's Cross. And I remember I had to ask a police officer because I didn't know, I got lost. And I missed the train. And then I had to figure out how to use the phone to call him and say, I'm late, I don't know where I am. And he said, oh, it's okay, don't worry. You know, there's a lovely wee tea shop across the road from the train station, and I'll meet you there at the tea shop. And so we had never met each other. This was before, you know, cell phones and everything. And I didn't know what he looked like. So we actually exchanged photos, and this is like passport photo booth kind of things. And I was in art school, so of course I had to take a picture of myself and cut it up and like artfully put it on a piece of paper. So he had to use Photoshop. Thankfully he was a visual effects guy, so he had to do it to figure out what I look like. And I had this picture of him, and I'm kind of like looking around the town. So I get off the train, and I'm looking for this tea shop, and it was nowhere to be found. Like, I don't know what he was talking about. And so I asked a little old lady, because you would think a little old lady, of course, knows where the tea shops are, and she wasn't from the area. Okay, so, I'm getting there. So I go across the bridge, and I find a little tea shop. I sit down, I have this little picture, and I'm looking at the door, and I ordered my tea, and I'm drinking, and I'm waiting, where is this dude? And then I asked the waitress, is there another tea shop? Oh, you mean the one across the road from the train station? So I go back over the bridge, and I look, and I see there was like the awning. It was kind of, I mean, it was very dark and dimly lit, and I didn't see a sign. Anyway, and I kind of grubbed in there, I'm like, is he in there? I don't know if he's in there. And then I turn around, and there he is, the mysterious stranger coming over the bridge. That was Mr. Stuart McCarr. Show voodoo. Anyway.